have to miss, stay as caught up as possible. It's easy to, get busy and fall behind a week, but important to try to stay current if possible. Okay, welcome everyone. We're already on session 3. So you've watched your pre-video on treasure time talent, the theme anatomy, and the 4 domains and demands, and hopefully did your homework on the 4 domains worksheet. And like I said, I'm redoing them all right along with you. So I'm there with you. So let's just dive right in. Any initial questions before we kind of cover content piece by piece? Are there any questions you'd like to throw in? I'm trying to make sure. I cannot open the chat when I am in this mode, it looks like. So if you see a question you want me to answer that comes through in the chat, could somebody just flag that for me?
I'll watch chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, so no questions? All righty, so let's cover just some bullet points on treasure time and talent. The key role that talent plays with managing personal resources. I actually used this with a client today in context with, that's my dog, sorry. I thought she was occupied fully, but no. So I might have to do something about that if that continues. So treasure time and talent. I use this with a client today in the context of we've actually been working together quite some time, and she knows all of the information. She's really connected to her top 5, and we filter pretty much everything through the lens. And we were looking at a very specific area actually about what was going well and how she could use this model to even assess, actually in this case it was to free up the resource of time, and where she could look at that, identify some areas that if the finance or the treasurer could help buy her some more time so that she could have a fuller expression of the talent, which was this particular scenario. That's a useful one. It's actually something you can help a client language if they need help sort of processing through decisions that they're making, or if they're going to take something to their team and they need to manage some resources to evaluate kind of where to make those decisions. So it can be a really useful model to help ground a conversation. Any general questions about the treasure time and talent and how you might use it with somebody?
Or reactions to it. I'd like to hear what some of you thought when I talked through it, and if it made sense. That's a great point, and I agree. It is as good as you just said. I'm just kidding. Nobody said anything.
We have a quiet group. I'm going to try to figure out how to initiate discussion yet.
Well, I'll say something. I like the model. I like all your models.
Oh, thank you. That's why they're supermodels.
They are supermodels, but I've got model overload, and I'm just trying to work out which ones to use. Like filtering through the best ones.
Okay.
And,
nice.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to think about it. I mean, because on my end, I don't have like this collection of toys. I have these children, you know what I mean? Or whatever. I've watched them grow up from stupid little ideas to, okay, somewhat better ideas. But like on your end, what would it be like to have these models coming at you, and what do you do with them, and do they make sense? And how long does it take to wrap your mind around them? Or maybe it's really quick, but how do you use them? I don't know. I mean, it's just an interesting thing to think about.
It's true. I think that's a great point, Jim, because It is a lot of different things, and we actually want you to have them almost like your toolbox, that if a situation arises in conversation, especially in long-term clients, that you could, kind of like I did today, that like that was a really applicable thing to contextualize, what she was wanting to work on. She and I have never talked about that before, but we've talked about, purpose outcomes method when it applies. So these, especially the models that are more like the Treasure Time Talent, where it's not a very extensive process-driven model, those are more like talking points and things that you would apply. You certainly could add them to trainings, but like you said, it's a lot. And so you wouldn't want to overwhelm your audience with a ton of these at one go. And you'd want to be really selective. And again, I apologize tonight. She's never quite this involved.
Who are you talking about? Why don't you, can you show?
I'm talking about Lucy. I don't know if you can see her very well. Lucy, come.
Those stuff sharing your screen for a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too much time.
I know, but it's a cool little doggy, and I think they may as well get, she obviously wants people to know she's around. This is what a dog with woo looks like, by the way.
This is the woo dog. She is the social butterfly. If it would be her number one.
Everybody needs one of those in their life, I'm just going to say.
I don't know if you can see her well enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lucy.
Good.
I do have an idea of when I would use it, Jim, if it would be helpful to share.
Do it.
So very often people think that because they're dominant in a certain quadrant that they are unable to do another something. You know what I'm saying? Like my executing talents, my first one is number 11 at belief, and then 19. And then it's all of those executing, focus, discipline, all of that's at the bottom, right? And so I could very easily, and people like me and others, wherever you are, think that they can't do something. So Adam and Felinda, for example, are thinkers. They're dominant in their thinking. And so they can't execute on a system like this. That's where people would go.
Just to check in, are you talking about the worksheet for today, or are you talking about the time, treasure, talent model?
Oh, I am talking about today's workshop.
Oh, okay.
Worksheet.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
sorry.
That absolutely applies what you said there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the time, treasure, talent piece, what that was about when I created it was just to explain, hey, if we should be focusing on our wealth management, and that's going to be good for us, and if we should be focusing on our time management, and that's going to be good for us, then why wouldn't people buy into the idea that focusing on our talent would be good for us? Because what are we doing with our time but doing things? And if we can do more things in alignment with our talent, I think it makes our time more valuable. It allows us the expression of our talents, and that's more valuable. And it's not going to be a worse strategy for, growing your wealth. It's going to be a pretty good strategy if what you do is fun, and oh, by the way, people are going to throw money at you. It's a pretty good wealth generation strategy. And if you can rise above as being particularly outstanding, then that's great for your wealth. And then you get to spend more of your time doing the things you're good at. It's almost like it was incomplete without talents. Just talking about time and treasure was great, but it was like, no, it's missing that third piece that we're now in the era of, which is the talent era. It's pretty cool, I think. Anyway.
Absolutely. And I do want to return to Jim's point there, because I do think, especially as you're beginning to learn to use these models with clients and kind of articulating them, I would suggest, taking time to get really familiar with the ones you want to use, and then just, over time, take time to build in the others. And I'll say the main ones that I use all the time, Theme Anatomy, Coin, alignment, contrast, those are the big ones. And I put POM in there just naturally as part of the process of a relationship as we move through either large to small, groups to individuals. So those are the core ones that I use all the time. And then if I have more time or time arises, I do like to put the other ones in, but that's just how I go about it, because I know people definitely kind of latch onto those well, and there's a lot of supporting material. So to actually move us on, to get us to our worksheet, which is where I'd like to spend some time tonight, the theme anatomy. This one, I'll just say the purpose is central and key, but I am always asking people to look at, when you find yourself in alignment, really go back and identify what are the needs that are being met in the context of your top 5. Articulating them and connecting to them, you can't do it enough. And if you're in contrast, this is usually the first thing I look to if I'm working with somebody or myself. What are the needs that are not being met? And
are you sharing your screen yet, by the way?
Oh, I'm sorry. See, this is why you are usually in charge of this.
No worries. It's all good. Thank goodness you got me managing details.
I know, right?
Nothing's going to slip through the crack here now.
So I usually really do refer back to, if someone's in contrast, we look at the mismatch, but we look at what are the needs that are not being fulfilled. You will not be able to deny those needs. And if you are looking at the theme anatomy and that particular need does not resonate with you or your client, work on getting to one that does. These are really, they're very thought out suggestions, but they're not meant to be the end all be all. They're meant to get you to that point. So most of the time this need resonates. I'll tell you, I think I've only had one time where someone was like, I'm not sure I quite see that. And then when we talked about it a little more, it was fine. But most of the time people are like, oh, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want you all to know these were written by someone whose brain I don't always trust. Okay. That's so take that with a grain of salt. No, I'm just kidding. The truth is that that first part is the truth, but the other part of the truth is that people not knowing that report that this is amazingly helpful for them as a way to access their themes or connect with their themes in a way that other materials didn't quite allow to happen. Maybe not everybody, but a significant number of people I've worked with have pointed to this tool as particularly helpful.
The theme anatomy tool.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I just think it's so important with this one and, the 4 domains, breaking that open, that people don't feel labeled, that there's more to this that they can apply to themselves. That's what we love about this tool and we want others to experience. So let's actually segue that right into our 4 domains and the worksheet. So I just want to ask, what did resonate with you around this discussion of the 4 domains being demands life places upon us? And as you went through this, we'll get into that. Did you really see something a little clearer about yourself articulating it this way?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. For me, it was helpful just understanding the themes, the colors, and the overarching meaning of it, knowing that it was specifically meant for leader to explain better leadership style, then that they had to be definitely had to be categorized under something.
That's great. Do you feel like it helped you kind of see how, for example, deliberative builds relationships? Do you feel like it helped kind of clarify some of that too?
Yeah, and even to just look for ways where it could be used in a different category, or what to do with what I think is more thinking, but how to put it in executing, or where building the relationship with it could be the execution. So it's very helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think it's got to be so cool to just play this out to say, wow, how does deliberative help me build relationships? You know, or take your number one, intellection. How does that help you build? Was it at all surprising for you to go, oh, you know, I build relationships with people around deep thoughts, or I build relationships with people around being paranoid? No, just kidding. I'm making fun of deliberative. But, you know, I build relationships with people who are also really into, you know, safety kind of things that other people make fun of me for. But you know, the other deliberatives, they get it. And I like being around people who are safe like me, or I like being around people who are way more free, throw caution to the wind. You know, I don't know, any insights like that?
It's helping me to look at the environment that I'm already in and saying, well, why do I feel like I'm not, you know, building relationships or executing? And seeing if there's a need for it, or if there's a way to do it, and to really assess whether or not the environment is just not a good fit for me.
I love it. I mean, because that's exactly what we do, right? It's like your intellection's going, are these people going to like help me glean insights or something worthy of thought, you know? Are these people, you know, are they in tune with the larger web of life? I'm talking about your connectedness, you know? Do these people, are they willing to stray from the norm and go outside the bounds and explore new, you know, ways of doing things? I don't know. It's just interesting to go through that list and see that, yes, absolutely, these themes help us build relationships.
And I'd like to add too to that the theme anatomy ties in so well here, because as you do this worksheet and you're kind of looking at, okay, this is how my intellection, or one way at least, how my intellection builds relationships. But I am looking at my environments and the match or the mismatch. What are my needs that aren't being met, that I don't feel like that's, you know, happening here, that this isn't a good fit. Or as I do look at that and I can say, well, if I shift this, it might meet the need and help open up that, you know, toward match. But you do evaluate, you know, there are just some environments that simply aren't a match. And I love the way that this helps people understand that it's really about just finding that fit and going through this, you know, if they can break out that they're not in some kind of, you know, oh, I'm all strategic thinking, it must be me, you know, well, there's a lot more to it. And this is a way to get there. And then I think you're also looking for ways you can use, like for me, I look for ways I can use intellection to help build my relationships. So you begin to actually kind of get in front of that and meet those needs and sort of choose accordingly. It reduces a lot of contrast and drama in my life, and hopefully others.
Yeah, and I think if it's not a good fit, it feels better to know why than to feel like you're just quitting something, or, you know, this doesn't work. But you really have substantive information on the reasons why.
Yes, you get to evaluate them in a way that just exactly like you said, like doesn't feel like, oh, it's me or it's that, you know, it's okay, this is what it is, and look at it carefully, and then sometimes it'll shift and surprise you, and then sometimes it'll actually help you get out of an environment much faster with a much more positive energy. We've seen that a lot, actually, and begin to choose one that is, you know, that really is an environment where you can thrive. Sometimes it's just about languaging, though. It's interesting. We worked with somebody who it was a CEO and one of the direct reports, and they just weren't seeing certain themes playing out because they if I had to pick opposite personalities, it would be those two. They both really respected and understood each other in a lot of ways, but there were just certain ways having the language of the themes it just allowed them to explain, like, this is how I do this. This is how I help my direct reports, move from point A to point B. It's quieter, it's more in the background, but it's very specific. Once she was able to explain that to her boss, he was able to see that and appreciate that quality and actually come to her to kind of get advice on if something wasn't working with the way he was doing it, which was very much more like woo and communication based. So it can help shift that just by that the simple explanation and knowledge. So, turn it back over. Anybody else like to?
I want to pause there real quick because I think it's a really cool thing. The three of us all have intellection and ideation and input in our top fives. So if you want to just go back and rewind from when Nikki first started speaking, and then, then if you could stand it, that is, to listen to it again, because you'll hear taking it deeper and not even needing the other people in the conversation to propel them deeper. That's intellection, depth. It's going for the depth. And other people are like, I'm good right here. You don't need to go any deeper. And the intellection's like, I hear you, but depth. I can keep going, and everybody else has to come up for air eventually. So yeah, that's why intellection is not the life of the party. And
why you're loners, I would say, because you can't find people who can go deep as you want to go. Unless you're hanging out with other intellection people, which there's clubs like GK Chesterton Club. I'm serious, y'all.
Yeah, what is that? The Mensa?
I don't know. No,
Mensa.
they're philosophical, but that may bring you more satisfaction because I know that we could hear y'all doing that dance. It was fun. And as I was thinking about it, because I think, Felinda, you put it into the context of a work relationship to help you see. Well, I suddenly saw an image of marriage relationships. How some coaches may be called to shore up that, what's around them. So that would be another application.
It would be an awesome one. I for one, would love to see our content used in that specific category of one-on-one relationships, marriages, for example, business partnerships, to really go into this level of depth where, hey, I can either spend the next 15 years trying to figure out your ins and outs and doing a very poor job at that of doing it, or you can help me understand, like, what is your instruction manual, like what can I do to make sure you're operating functionally and happily, and what should I avoid to make sure I don't tilt you, for anybody that's ever played pinball.
Yeah.
You don't want to tilt.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I completely second and third that if you can have those conversations with people that are close to you in your life, primary relationships, families, children, and if you are working with that group, it is a really lovely thing to watch, especially if they've known each other a long time. You'll hear things like, oh, that's why you do it. You weren't just doing it to, because they're very free, usually. I mean, it's a little more free than the professional context. You'll hear that, like, you're not just doing it to be stubborn or to get at me, or you have this whole way you do it. Oh, cool. There's just a lot of positivity and healing and understanding that can come in. And I think I highly recommend doing that. And if you do that work with people, it's pretty fun.
So
can I just, sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead. I'm patient.
The thing I wanted to say was that I think the 4 domains worksheet is one of the best things of the whole program, because it encourages people to look at the talents as multi-dimensional and really expand their use, which is kind of flying in the face of what Gallup is doing at the moment, which is dumbing it down into 4 categories and making this very different assessment tool like some of the others. So it's taken away some of its power and magic. So I think that the 4 domains worksheet is really excellent. And I think it's great for generating a conversation with people where they go beyond the words of the signature description, for instance, and they start thinking about what are the implications of this and how I can use it and all the different dimensions. So if this is one of my babies, this would be my favorite baby.
Nice. Well, I want to say this. I think I've stumbled upon a strength of yours. Jim, you should do endorsements. Like, just listening to you, like I could have said the same thing and people would have been like, shut that guy up. But then you come on and it's like, no, hear him out. He's got something to say. So I think that's like a little side thing. You should talk like that wherever you go and just wait for it. And people will start to be like leaning in, you know? Anyway, just a little tip.
Leanne?
Yeah, I'll just chime in, and that was perfect, Jim, because it complements what I was going to say, that multi-dimensional piece of the 4 demands. It really, I had 2 takeaways. The first takeaway was I love that it's the thinking domain, not necessarily the strategic domain, because that's a challenge for it as coaches when people have that conversation and you not only have a theme, but you also have this whole domain. And I personally, on a personal level, hear, oh, you're so strategic, but my first thinking, isn't until 12, and so I was struggling with that personally for a long time until I realized where my strategic comes from, and not necessarily it's not a domain. So I loved that separation of those 2. It's really powerful as a coach because when you take that out, you have a lot of executives that have a hard time with that, managers that have a hard time with that, but that thinking really, I think, encompasses it more. The other takeaway for me was that, it is challenging to pull it out into like my activator, or when I talk to people with responsibility, that is how they build relationships. They're reliable. They know when they're going to say something, they're going to follow through. That says something to me as a person that works with that person. I trust that's going to get done come, heck or high water, they're going to be there. And so it really does have that. For the coach, it's a powerful conversation shift. So I am a pro fan of this all the way, because it helps us contextualize how these actually act in our worlds without being so flat. So it was just kind of a kudos. Those are my 2 major takeaways.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, we agree totally on the strategic thinking. That's one of the reasons we shortened that, actually all of them. I worked with somebody and, she's strategic was her 34, and she was like, I just don't understand. How can this be? And I'm like, well, and I would say what we do try to say, and I don't think we put it in the pre-session video, so I want to say it here, is that we try, because of that kind of confusion of like, a lot of the words might not mean what they, the connotation in sort of normal society of what they mean, that they're just sort of, almost like the heading of a whole group of, talents. So to say like, you're going to have to take a closer look and make sure that all of your themes, that you understand what it means in the context of this assessment. There's a few of them like that, like competition, there's just a few. So it's just, yeah, that was one of the things we were running into as well. And so just taking it out of that, it's already hard enough for people to be like, but I build relationships. Why don't I have any? You're like, oh no, you do. And so just, yeah, this is one of the reasons we developed this and we really push this concept. So.
Yeah, and Leanne, I want to say, I used to have this distinguished British gentleman do my endorsements I'm thinking about firing him and hiring you now. So just a heads up.
Hey, you can't have too many.
Hey,
Have a whole
I
team.
can collaborate. So Jim, if you want, I mean, I'm happy to. We can. That's my favorite. I like to achieve with others. So. Let's tag team.
Right there. Relationships all in one. Would anybody else like to share their insights, or just anything they might have learned about themselves here?
I think we need to hear from Kimberly.
Yeah,
I'm calling her out. She did her homework the next day. Not
Really?
flying in by the seat of her pants like me. Somebody else.
This is an example of how everyone does a specific activity in the unique way they do it, right?
Right.
Like you're not going to do it way ahead of time, and Kimberly's not going to wait till the last minute. Like either one of those just wouldn't be a fit. But here you
But
go.
I do want to hear what she says
I would
because
love
she
to
was
hear.
super excited, and I'm going to call her out on it, kid.
I just want to say, Felinda, that was actually very clever what you did there. So watch that on rewind.
Kimberly, would you like to share?
Oh, I have to unmute myself. Yes, I was so excited. All this information gave me so much energy after we finished class last week that I went ahead and went through the entire lesson after we spent 45 minutes online together and did my assignment, and I haven't looked at it again until today. So so relationships, theme 1 was relationships, right? And my top 5 is ideation. So how I build relationships is I'm a great listener to people when they're struggling. And I said, great at listening to struggles of others in all areas of people's lives. So whatever the problem is, I'm a great listener. I'll listen to you all day long, but my ideation will take over and I will give you 100 different ways to fix it. But the thing is I've run into a lot of people, they're like, oh, that's a great idea, and they would rather just keep talking about their struggles. So when you meet people that are struggling, you can give them 20 different ideas. And if it's not what they want to hear, they're going to continue to struggle. So how do you get past that? And so then your influence, your connectedness is my next influence. So I influence others to relate to one another. Like if they're having a problem with someone in the workplace, you're like, well, we all need to relate to one another and understand where we're all coming from. And so I thought that was good. And then my beliefs, I inspire others to do the right thing and, live by the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So, and then I'm just kind of like this really simple person is what I've found out. I'm not like your intellectual person who's struggling trying to build a relationship intellectually. I love intellectual people because I can give them an idea and they'll go with it, which I surround me with intellectual people all day long, please. They're in the middle. They don't struggle as often as some people do. So I don't know. And then my 4th theme, the execution woo, well, I'm just the life of the party, I guess. I don't know. I'm a giver, I'm complimentary, I'm kind, I'm cheerful, and I like to lead by example. So this tool is a great tool. I just can't wait to see how well it works with others. Because it's done great for me so far.
Kimberly, if you're comfortable, thank you for sharing. And if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how you're woo and relator. As you were doing this exercise and you're looking at like, okay, relator is under the relationship category and woo is under the influencing, but clearly they're both about, people, and you get energy in different ways. And if we took those apart, they can look very different. So did you kind of see anything in that? And then how do they work together for you? Or did you kind of take a closer look at those two?
No, see, I did this a week ago. So, I mean, I would have to go back through it again and to really, so I don't know. I mean, I relate to people I just listen. I'm a good listener, I guess. I don't know. I can relate to people in many different ways.
That's what I'm hearing, is that you can kind of adapt to, if you need to be the life of the party, or if you need to be, really focused in that one-on-one. I would say that everyone here can do that, but I imagine that particular experience, either one might energize you, where, being the life of the party might, to a different relator, be actually like avoid at all costs, So I think that's a lovely fluidity.
Yeah.
I'd love to offer something about that from a perspective from other woo relators, I think. Because I have woo, but my relator is 23, so that's pretty low. So I'm very interested in connections here. And so are you. And you're also interested in connections here. And I am, but I need somebody to take me there because I don't really know how. And you do. So when you say that you just help all kinds of people, you do, because it's in all kinds of different ways. Whereas I tend to be here.
I love that explanation and that addition. And I will say that what just happened is what you're going to hear a lot, is that when you ask somebody about something, you can see and are kind of amazed that is special about them. They often are like, well, I don't know, I just do it. It just happens, like it's just is, right? And then we're over here watching how cool this is, and articulate, and Rhonda's like, oh my gosh, so you'll see that a lot. Like the things that are closest to us are not often the clearest to us because they're so just they just happen. and so I love that. And I think that the more you have conversations with people, you already do that for others. And then I that's one of the reasons we really want you to go through this for yourself too, to kind of bring what Adam calls something out of the background of obviousness about yourself, so that you can also experience that. But it's just really fun to hear those conversations and to see that exchange. So thank you both.
So can I see you wanted to get the conversation started, Felinda, and now you're never going to shut any of us up. So, and this kind of ties back to that environmental model that we talked about, right? And in coaching, oftentimes one really good visual I use when I'm talking with people is, there's opportunities to look in the mirror and there's opportunities to look out the window. And when you look out the window, you're looking at that environment that's surrounding you. And this tool, really helps you put that mirror up, because it's hardest for us to see, even as coaches, some of those natural skills being talents, and that's what we pull out in people. And so, oftentimes, and so that's what I love about some of these exercises is it's twofold, and you never want to be looking in the mirror too much, and you never want to be looking out the window, because you need a balance of both of those things. So that, that really tied that kind of conversation I have with folks. And these tools, whichever one I choose to use with a client, I always make sure I have one that complements it, is a contemporary piece to it, with the if you're asking someone to look and appreciate themselves, following that up with okay, now don't forget to look out the window, because we can kind of pendulum swing as people and as coaches too. So
I would like to ask if we could steal that mirror window to go with individual environment. I think that's just fantastic.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay, and we got it on video, so you can't sue us later. So there's that.
I'll send you my trademark. No, it's.
Is your name Gallup?
Yeah.
Linda, edit that out.
Yes, I love it. So that's just, I want to make sure we cover the homework before we wrap up, but we can definitely talk a little bit more about this. But I want to honor people's time and make sure we get this into the hour mark. But that discussion and the application, you know, it has merit just on its own benefit for us in the room. You know, I think, yeah, it was Rhonda who said the collaboration. That's important for us. And, you know, as people, as, you know, learners together, but it's also a way to kind of get you started on like hearing how people talk about these tools too. So, you know, it's important on its own, and it has some design integrity that it's going to help you hopefully kind of connect to it and be able to use it with your clients and people in your life. So I just like to kind of point out that, you know, I think last week I showed that Grant Wiggins quote about, you know, just because we do a worksheet or an activity doesn't mean we have takeaways from it automatically. It's here that we begin to develop the takeaways and really understand them. So, and hopefully continuing going forward. So, and you'll see us build on some of these pieces, which is actually about where we're going to go next. So your homework I'll share the screen so you can see it. So your homework for next week will be to watch the pre-session video. What we're going to cover for that time will be the coin model facilitation overview. What that means is we talk about kind of some conceptual pieces about how we introduce things, how we sort of set the stage, talking about talent and bringing the client into the coin model. It works for one-on-ones to very large groups. And you'll hear us talk about that a little bit. And then over the next few weeks, we're going to cover the facilitation of each content piece. And, you know, that's just where we're going to go. Don't worry about the nuts and bolts of setting up a workshop. And that's going to come later. This is more about, all right, I want to talk to or begin to work with the content with the client. We just give you some samples of how we do it. You've already seen, you know, the foundations course. You've already seen some of how we do it, but we get a little bit more in detail. And then we talk about the POM tool. And that is your homework for next week, to complete the POM worksheet. I would again suggest connect with an accountability partner and to really embrace the way you get these things done. If it's ahead of time, if it's last minute, it all counts. But if you need to send it to us to remain accountable, that's good too. I like that. And so I think
you're talking to me, Belinda.
Oh, I'm talking to more than just you. Believe me, others know who they are. They're just being quiet. So, and some of them, yeah, aren't even here tonight. But anyway, so the POM worksheet. This is a really useful tool that I don't want to put you into a complete box with how you're going to do it, but I'll give you some examples of how you can. I want you to take an area, an activity, or something you want to work on. So it could be something that like, oh, back when I did the alignment meter, I really saw this part of the day that I just was thriving, and I want to do more of that. So let me just sit down and identify that activity and go through a POM on how I could do more of that. I'll give you an example. Let's say, actually, Rhonda, I'm going to use you. You don't have to do this at all. But let's say you gave me one that you had identified. She loves to do the calls. She would like to do more of them. I'm putting words in, this is abstract here right now. So if she wants to do more of those, she could do a POM on, okay, her purpose would be not just to do the calls, but why she would want to do the calls. The outcome would be to add something specific, maybe 2 more calls a month that's an official series or something. And the methods would then be her identifying in realistic context the way it matches with her talents and some really specific concrete methods of how she could realize those outcomes. You could do it with something much smaller. Let's say you have a meeting coming up with a client and you want to really POM that meeting. What's the purpose of that meeting? What are the outcomes that would show that meeting had a successful duration, and what are the methods you're going to use? Some talking points, an agenda. So you could do it on a very micro level, which would be the smaller, an email, an important, maybe you want to introduce a client to their top 5. You could do it on something very, very concentrated, which I actually recommend in the beginning, doing it something really concrete that you know is like, okay, that was my purpose. Yep, those are my outcomes. That worked. And I see how my method supported that. But you could begin to use this in a lot of different ways. So I want you to pick one thing, do the POM worksheet, and if you need more specificity, reach out to us. But I want you to do it in the context of something that matters personally to you. So I don't want to be like giving you some, thing that doesn't matter. So pick something that means something to you, even if it's very, very measurable and small. Adam, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, Rhonda raised a question. In the video, in our pre-session video, will we put any examples of that in there? Or in the training or are you asking in the training, like when we do it live and work with clients, do we give them examples? Rhonda?
Yes, we will. And actually, that pre-session video will be up either later tonight or tomorrow. We needed to cover a few extra things and I want to edit it in there. So look for that to be on your Kajabi resource either late tonight or early tomorrow. And yeah, and in fact now, yes, we will put some examples in there.
I want to say about this, you could use this with an email that you've been stressing about, like, maybe you don't have one currently, but like maybe there's like some interaction that you really needed to focus in on. So, you're not sure where to go. POM is great for that kind of thing. I'm not sure where to go. I want to do a decoration project in my house, but I'm not sure where to go. Start with purpose. What would be the purpose of your decoration project? To annoy my spouse or to express my creativity. Very different purposes, So, and then that purpose being, different will lead to very different outcomes as a result. What outcomes would tell me I've sufficiently annoyed my spouse, or what outcomes would say I've sufficiently expressed my creativity? And then your methods for how you go about doing it.
Can I share? This is what you did with me a few weeks ago. So Adam did this with me. Like he said, and I didn't have the worksheet then. And that's what I've been looking at the worksheet, trying to figure out, oh, I didn't do it like you had said. This is how it looks on paper. But I was thinking about doing another show. That's what you were talking about.
Oh, great example. This is a great example.
Yes, it was and I will do one, Coach Talk TV. I just haven't, I'm in the middle of some other stuff right now. But so Adam was like, well, why are you doing that? That was the first thing. I'm like, because I want to. And he said, but why? Who are you doing it for? I said, well, for me. It's for me because I love doing that. And so it gives me more of an opportunity to do more of what I want to do. And then he started asking me about the outcomes. Like, what did I want out of it? I want a great show. I want high reviews, high views and reviews. I want great shareable content. That's the outcome I want. #maximizer. And so then he said, well, let's figure out the how. And that's most people, what they do when they're trying to start something, Adam, right? This is true, is they jump right into the how and the worry about what they're doing.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't even think I know how to do that. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. And we go and our mind gets all twisted up. And so the POM stops that.
Yeah.
Can I hear an
yes.
amen?
Yes.
Somebody.
Amen. You are preaching it. I want to say a couple things. No,
Thank
I
you.
want to
Did I
say
get anything wrong, or you're just going to add to
you
it?
did great.
Yeah.
Listen, I want you to understand that I heard you when you did this.
You apparently did, and I'm blown away by how sage my coaching was. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It was fabulous. I remember we were like racing because I had a call in 15 minutes.
But I love this example because one, it shows that I didn't need to teach you the model. It helps later, like if it worked, and I'll say, okay, here's what I did. But like, I just need to facilitate it. Why? What's your purpose? I need to try to help you surface what your purpose is. Purpose lives in the background. It's always there. We don't invent purpose. We discern it and we bring it to the foreground. That's all. And so you can facilitate or coach somebody to do that. Once you have purpose, outcomes are easy because outcomes are just the natural extension. It'd be like if I pick up one end of a stick, I automatically am picking up the other end of the stick. If I pick up purpose, I'm automatically picking up outcomes. It just comes along with it. Then methods. And I want to say something that I think sounds pretty smart, and you guys will tell me if it does or doesn't. But what are methods? What are methods? Methods are two things. One, they are what produces outcomes. They are also what consume resources. Your purpose does not consume resources. Your outcomes don't consume resource. It's your methods that are consuming your resources. And what are your resources? Your time, your money, your talent. So there's that model again. But then there's also things like your energy and your emotions and your resilience and your focus. So a good method is one that produces maximum outcome for minimum use of resource. And why wouldn't we do that? And then a bad method is, what do you think a bad method would be then?
It uses all of your resources
While producing very little of your
outcome.
Yes. And have we ever done bad methods before?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like we look at our life's biggest mistakes and the most expensive life lessons. And if we go back and start looking at it, we'll be like, all right, bad method.
Yeah, I'm going to just jump in there too to follow up. If those methods do not match your talents, they are going to consume more resources. So evaluate your methods in the context of your talents. That's important. That's crucial. Help your clients do that. You will see a lot of methods that look like shoulds, that they're just like, well, that's how someone told me I'm supposed to get there, and it's absolutely the opposite of how they do anything. That's going to consume a lot of their resources and likely not produce the outcomes that they want. Also,
it'll lack excellence, and it'll suck the life out of them.
And it usually doesn't come to fruition. And so, yeah, it'll be just like, oh, such a downer. If their methods match their talents, they will be energetic and they will likely produce even more outcomes than they even realized to set in the first place. And also similarly, evaluate your purpose for doing whatever activity also in the context. If someone comes to you and says, oh, and we've done this, Adam and I do this a lot with how we're going to move forward on certain things. Someone might come to us and ask us for something, or we think, oh, this would be kind of cool. And we start looking at like, well, why would we do that? And we start to see like, one, that would drain our energy. It would take too much resource. It matches none of our other purpose for doing anything we do. We don't do it. We don't even, it stops there. And so you can start to say, like, when you begin to do the POM for something, if your purpose matches your talents and you're ready to go and you set your outcomes and your methods match your talents, it's hard to stop a person if all those are in place. So Adam, back to you. I just wanted to throw
Oh, no, I would highly recommend people rewatch that Felinda segment right there. That was a mic drop because like, really, if I could dare to, recapture that in a more concise way is that strengths is a really good method. That's why we love the Strengths Finder and the whole philosophy behind it. A strength is a good method. Talents are a good method too, and they're not the same thing. There's a subtle difference, and we won't get into that now. But talents are a good method, and strengths are good methods. Why? Because they produce maximum outcome with minimum use of resource. That would be a definition. You could redefine a strength that way. You could say a strength produces maximum outcome for minimum use of resource.
Also, it'll help you stay the course. Like if you're going to encounter bumps in the road, if you don't have the activity aligned with your strengths, if your talents aren't part of it, usually you just get discouraged or it just starts to dissipate. So Rhonda, can you ask me that question again? I want to make sure I follow.
Well, I'm just looking at what Adam and I did. Am I on? Yeah. I looked at what Adam and I did several weeks ago, and he said purpose is your why. Is that?
Yeah.
So does the why always need to be about me?
No, but it should be in alignment with something to help you thrive. So the purpose, evaluated in the context of you, of course, because you're going to be performing. But let's say you're working with a client and the purpose is, you're looking at, they want to do some kind of initiative. Well, the purpose is for that initiative and why they would be doing it. It wouldn't really be about you or necessarily that individual. It might be more about the particular initiative or the organization. So you can, I don't know if that answers your question directly, but if anything that you
I'm hearing, okay. It could be about me, but it could be about me serving somebody else or.
Yes.
So I wrote about this in our positive leadership curriculum. And so I think you can look at purpose from 3 lenses. The first is survival and thriving. Like that's just one lens. You could look at my survival and my thriving, or someone else's survival, or our communal survival and our communal thriving. That would be, one lens of purpose. The second lens of purpose is your authentic purpose, which is very much about you. It's the idea that each of us has an innate purpose, and our lives are meant to be an expression of that. And that's all, I mean, that's like high, like noble sounding and all this stuff. But truly that's the aspirational values of Talent to Strength is that at that high level, like helping people truly to be at their best. And so to excavate that authentic purpose and to give expression to it is really, really at the core of what we're about. But that's high level, like, that's intense stuff. And then the third lens of purpose is situational. Every situation has a purpose. Your day so far today, you've gone through segments, your morning segments, in meetings, and another, then afternoon, and what did you do? And now in your evening, I mean, our days are segments. And so each and situational, and to recognize that each one has its own unique purpose. And so the capacity for purpose is the ability to just discern it and to even think, to ask the question, what's the purpose of this call tonight? What's the purpose of this email? What's the purpose of this conversation? What's the purpose of this meal? I mean, it can get a little out of hand, but the practicing that is the capacity. And then you just start to realize, oh, wow, purpose is there just waiting to be plucked like flowers.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that occurs to me that, and I'm sure you'll probably get into this, but in the methods, sometimes you have methods that need to be done for the outcome that are not in your talent, and you have to farm them out.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Partnership is a great method.
Yes.
And
Got it.
And that allows me to circle back to a point Felinda made that I wanted to emphasize. She was talking about how we do collaborations, and what she said was, how does it fit with our limitations? Oh, is this person able to contribute where we're not so strong? But the other thing is that I'm learning more and more not to build partnerships with people that aren't playing to their strengths. So if someone's going to do a service for me that is not playing to their strengths, I can't get mad at that person for not knowing that they're just miscast in the wrong career. No one showed them that. But I have to be the one to be able to observe and go, oh, you're not reliable to produce the results I'm looking for. Now, I wouldn't say those words. I mean, maybe I would in rare circumstances, but the ability to recognize it, because then otherwise it's my fault for my needs not getting met in that relationship. That person, it wasn't built for meeting those needs. It makes life way better, and so that's why that's why we're not a strengths finder company. We're an alignment company. We're you know, if we're a company at all, it's about, everything we're about is enhancing people's sense of alignment. And strengths is just such a powerful element of that, that it may as well be like one of our number one go-to moves. It's like, you know, if we were professional wrestlers and we needed like a signature move, Strengths Finder is a great signature move to pull out, as long as it fits with our overall purpose of creating alignment. All right, I'll stop there.
Great. We're getting at that hour mark, so we'll stick around to talk more and answer questions. But that is your homework, to watch that pre-session video and do that worksheet. And you know, even ask yourself, what's the purpose of this activity? You know, we give you activities. It's getting the articulation of why you're doing it will help you explain to your client why, and it gets everybody to that application stage so much faster, we find. So thank you all for being here. It's just, and yes, the discussion is definitely.
That made it way better, way better.
Enjoy the piece. So thank you again, and we'll see you next Thursday. But in the meantime, we'll say it again, reach out with any questions or thoughts. We like to hear everything.
Yep. All right, yeah, so we'll just stick around for about 5-10 minutes if anybody has questions. But if not, if you don't have questions, no need to stick around. So any questions?
Can I just make a comment? When you're going through the, when Kimberly, I think it was talking about woo and relator, how they're different.
Yeah.
It does seem to me that all of these exercises, when you're talking about individual themes, get another whole level of depth when you start talking about combinations and how they work together. And particularly when you've got the example of something that's an opposite. So traditional opposite is woo and relator, might be activator and deliberative or something like that, and how they work together is so insightful. Really, really.
Right.
Thank you. And that was actually a point I had wanted to make too. So thank you for reminding me. That's absolutely right. It's so powerful. And I would imagine if you did this worksheet, you were maybe sometimes hard pressed to separate, you know, one of the themes from the other. You might have seen in your description, like I know learner for me was bleeding into input, was bleeding into ideation. They enhance each other and they really shape how you show up as an individual. And so, you know, we do ask you to separate it out, but almost for the very fact that you'll see how those combinations really work together in you. So thank you, Jen. That was absolutely an important point for that worksheet.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
I have something. Adam, one of your old clients, I guess, from 20 years ago, because I'm
not even that old. I'm only like 16. Go on.
He said you were really young, but you came into his office and you asked him, why did he have a stapler on the desk? And I was like, you sure we're talking about the same guy? He goes, yeah, we're talking about the same guy. I know we are. Adam Seaman. I know that guy. He works with people in organizing the workplace. And I was like, oh, okay.
So I asked him why he had a stapler on his desk, huh?
Why do you have all this stuff on your desk? You don't need all this stuff on your desk. It's a distraction.
Is that how I said it?
That's what he said. He said just donate it. You don't need it.
That's great.
Sounds like you needed a little development there, Adam.
Oh, you mean I wasn't born into the world perfect? It took me a few months to do that, to get there. Yeah, that's true.
But I love that you were asking that then, and it made him think about why. I wonder.
It made him think about why is this idiot in my office? That's what it made him think about.
No, but if he's remembering something that many years later, he probably does. Well, why do I have a stapler? And he probably has a reason if it's still there.
A lot of people would be surprised. I was a little cocky back then. I see the surprise on everybody's face. That's great. I'm glad you realized that.
That is too funny.
But I just thought that was kind of, you know, an insight onto where you got started. And someone, I mean, you set such an impression with him, whatever it was that you were doing in the workplace, that he remembered your name. And, you know, you helped him organize his office space.
Awesome. Oh, good. I'm glad. I hope he wasn't offended, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, but that is it, guys. Like our purpose leaves clues, you know, and it's just, can we read it? And Don Clifton, this is why he would say that I'm sorry, I'll tell you why I'm distracted. It's kind of interesting why. But he'd say this is why our strengths are invisible to us. So here's what's distracted me. Kimberly has this other combination in her top 5 that's interesting: belief and connectedness. See, those two themes actually used to be part of one theme called spirituality. Mm-hmm. And then Gallup split them off into 2 because they're very different approaches to spirituality. And then I'm like, that's pretty rare. But then I'm like, oh, Kathy Coffey, who's not on the call, she has that combination. And then I'm like, oh, and this is what distracted me. I'm like, Susan, who is on the call, also has that combination.
This particular group is very high in connectedness, and it's pretty cool. Just saying, to see.
Yeah, we're not supposed to have favorite themes, but that's my favorite theme.
Well, Adam, I have to say your shirt is my favorite shirt of the outfit.
I don't know what you're talking about. This? This?
I was distracted by it.
The ability to summon the power of all 34 at any moment. Right there, as an undergarment of power, you know? We're really excited about those things. Yeah, we just have fun with those little creations, you know? It's just fun. We get to do it, and yeah.
You're almost blushing, Adam.
Almost.
Yeah, we just find those visuals to be really, like, you know, all about, like, getting people excited, and then they you know, respond. And that was definitely not something I initially connected to, but Adam definitely has from the beginning. I was more like the paper visual and, like, you know, really, really, you know, practical. So it took me a while, and Adam, you know, really was kind of championing that. And I'm so glad we're where we are now with it, because I always have appreciated the visual. That wasn't what I was saying, but I just think that you can see it's clearly fun for him. And so it's just going to be fun to see how that grows. I do find myself drawn to certain talents, and I would never have known it if I hadn't made everybody in my life take onto each other. I have so many relators in my life. It's really something.
That's actually quite a compliment to you, because relators are the pickiest people to have relationships with. And so that means... Right? That means you've tricked them, and that's hilarious.
Kimberly is like, what?
Felinda's the relator hunter. She just knows how to trick them, and yeah.
I think that would be the worst thing to tell a relator, but but it really did. Like, I started, you know, some of you've already done this, and some of you are newer to it. You will start to see patterns in the people that are around you, and some of them will be very complementary to your themes. And some will be like, wow, so interesting that one is showing up over and over. Huh. It starts to make you see how there's some really lovely strength crafting or just complementary, you know, supports. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, but it's a fun part of this, I think.
I know why some of them are brought into my life. To teach me lessons. Yes, that's exactly why.
That's why I keep my mind closed.
I was just going to say 2 things. I'm really curious to know if this guy still has a stapler on his desk.
I was wondering the same thing.
But the other thing was about the connectedness and belief. And when I took Adam's course before, what I did for my exercise was to actually work with a team of 10. And everybody on that team had connectedness in their top 5. And not sure if it was 7 or 8 had belief in their top 5. And so did really see a lot of those two together. And, you know, why they split them, I don't know. And are they really occurring that much together? You know, was there a reason for splitting it?
That's really an interesting question. Well, first we have to know about the stapler. Kimberly, is it still on his desk?
She doesn't know. She's on mute. I don't know if she knows that. Okay.
No, he removed the stapler that day. The stapler, I think, and a few other things. Like, I'm guessing that Adam thinks that you should have a clear desk. He doesn't want to come to my desk. It's totally full of
Or
stuff.
mine. Good
I'm
grief.
in so much trouble with you, Adam.
Oh, Adam, would you like to weigh in on this?
Okay, first of all, I'm pretty sure the way I talked to him was not, get rid of this stapler. This stapler has very low ratings.
It's a distraction. Why do you have the stapler? You don't need it. Get rid of it.
I guess. Okay, that's probably more of how I said it.
But I would suggest Adam is not necessarily ruthless about his desk. Would it agree, perhaps?
I
Oh
have
yeah,
an
I'm extremely
idea.
hypocritical. That's a necessary quality to be a coach, I believe.
I wouldn't go so far as to say hypocritical. I'm just saying, you know, there's no stapler on your desk, but
Nope.
you know, there are things.
There are
I do
things.
have an idea, though, about the connectedness and belief and why they would have split those away from spirituality.
Oh, what is it?
Well, it's a guess. I don't know, Adam. Do you know the whole
I don't know the
backstory on
reason.
that?
No. Mm-mm.
Well, in my experience, and I work a lot with people with connectedness and belief, one of them is more black and white in their thinking.
One of
Yep.
them.
One of them is more
That's
black
it.
and white. Belief
That's
is
what
more
I.
black and
That's what I
white.
think too.
Yeah, and it compels them to action. Connectedness is
You know what I'm wondering?
I think more open. Like
yes, they're
belief
more
would
open.
be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering
And-
if those of you that have both of those on the Myers-Briggs would be relatively balanced between sensing and intuiting. You know, like, you know, I see connectedness as very much about intuition, and that belief is very much about specifics.
Very much so.
Yeah, Nikki, you were weighing in on connectedness, and I didn't catch the very end of.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was saying connectedness is more open and more open-minded. It may see, like, a belief to me may be, I don't want to say this and make a insinuation, but more, like you said, black and white, so maybe more pertaining to a religion where person with connectedness sees the connection overall, the big picture. And think, oh, well, how do all these things relate?
Yeah, I would agree with everybody. In my experience, I don't see a lot of those so in the same top 5 often, like the people that I've worked with and know. I usually, in my experience, see one or the other. So it's cool to hear from people who see it a lot in their world, right? That's kind of what I was saying about you kind of, there's some surfacing around some combos and things. But what I do see too, and one of the reasons they might have split it is, I do think that connectedness is sometimes not necessarily tied specifically to spirituality. Like connectedness can operate in the connections between even like departments. Like they can see the connectedness about the way the company's functioning and see this kind of more organic fabric. which is not spirituality, right? So, and I also think tying belief to spirituality might be a mistake too, because there are many things people that with belief have that don't relate to that. So I am glad they split them apart and named it not under the umbrella of spirituality, because I have a feeling that was probably misleading for some people.
Sure. Think about the political scene.
Right? It just,
there's black and white. There are, I mean, as far as issues and how they feel about and act about certain things, right? So it's just, I think it's very, very different. It's almost like belief is boots on the ground and connectedness is up.
Head in the clouds.
Not in the clouds.
Ideal, being
well,
ideal.
More and in I think connectedness, I just think it's very diverse.
I think that if you wanted to look at kind of the essential difference between the political poles of conservative and liberal, it would be on the liberal side is connectedness and on conservative is belief.
I would not. I'd say it'd be belief and belief.
Okay.
To me, absolutely. That's how I see it, but they're diverse beliefs, right?
I can see that.
That has nothing to do with religion.
That's right.
Where a lot of people want to put belief is in that context, and it's not. It's black and white issues.
That's a great point. I've had people who are atheists who have very high in belief, because belief could be about a philosophy. It could be about a principle. It could be about something as simple like, what are your beliefs about music? And it'd be like, well, I don't know. What are your beliefs about food? My belief is that, food is scarce and you should eat it up as fast as you can. And that's going to, like that belief will drive your behaviors. Beliefs and behaviors are there's a lot of,
Think about very, very faithful vegetarians.
They're boring.
Or think about the people who are
I know, I'm one of them, so.
I'm just saying, like you see belief all over the place in advocacy issues like PETA, people who are really for the whatever the thing of animals, you know what I'm talking about? The
ethical treatment of animals.
Yes. They're very strong in their belief. Usually if people give their money, they have beliefs around that particular purpose. That's oftentimes a sign too, I guess, or an indicator.
Good. Yeah, I think it's just here we are just talking about two themes, and it's really, really fascinating.
So fascinating.
It really is.
Oh my gosh!
But we do need to we do want to wrap it up. I want to let everybody go. If you have any other questions, feel free, shoot us an email, schedule a time to chat. We're really enjoying this with you guys, being on this journey with y'all. I hope you're enjoying it too.
Really are. Thank you.
Fun.
Cool.
See y'all later.
Have a great
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye.